Hi, Group 3. I'm Karen Worsham. Nice to meet you. You'll have to excuse my wet hair and messy house, but I'm stuck inside as Tropical Storm Andrea comes barreling through. So today what I want to do is I want to model for you the paraphrasing strategy. I chose the paraphrasing strategy because it was a strategy that I thought I could use a lot in my third grade classroom. Some of the strategies I've used too, like the mnemonic strategy, we use DMSB for divide, multiply, subtract, bring down, and we even put it to it, do monkeys smell bad, or do monkeys smell bananas. The third graders really enjoy that. But I wanted to really use the paraphrasing strategy and practice modeling it for you guys because third graders struggle with that. They are able to sometimes answer questions, go back into the story to see what the correct answer is, but they struggle with putting stories into their own words. And even more than stories, they struggle more with nonfiction, putting nonfiction into their own words when it's time for them to write a report or write a paragraph about what they've learned from a nonfiction text. It's very hard for them to not just copy exactly what the science book said or what the social studies book said and put it into their own words. So I'm going to practice modeling that strategy for you today. When we talk about paraphrasing, we talk about when we put things into our own words. That's important when we read and when we write. When we read, it's important to put what we've read into our own words to make sure that we're stopping to check that we understand what we're reading. There's no point in reading a 30-page long chapter if we get to the end and say, huh? So in order to kind of check in with ourselves to make sure we're understanding what we're reading, we use the paraphrasing strategy. Another time it's important to use the paraphrasing strategy is when we write, especially when we start talking about nonfiction. We need to research and read other nonfiction books to find out the information that we put into a report. But it's also important that we don't just copy exactly what the first book said and make it our own work, because then we really haven't done anything but copy. We haven't really showed the reader that we've understood what we researched and we put it into our own third grade, for my purposes, vocabulary. So I'm going to show you today the paraphrasing strategy. When we talk about the paraphrasing strategy, we can think about the mnemonic RAP, R-A-P. The first step when we're paraphrasing would be to read. And I want to be a little more specific and say to read a paragraph. We don't want to read a 500-page novel and try to paraphrase it because that's going to be too challenging. That's too much information. That would be best for a summary to tell a friend what the book was about without giving away the ending. We also don't want to just read a sentence. It would be very hard to paraphrase one sentence, and it would have to happen after every sentence, and that would take too long. So we want to make sure that it's effective and efficient and that it's right there at a paragraph, and that would be the perfect amount to read. So our first step is going to be R in RAP and read a paragraph. The next step is going to be A in RAP, and that's going to be to ask ourselves what is the main idea of the paragraph, and then to name some supporting details. 2 or 3 details would be best. For third graders, sometimes in my situation, 2 would probably be the max unless they were a little more advanced and they could remember 3. But for my purposes, if they could remember the main idea and 2 supporting details, we would be great. The next step in RAP and the last step is P, and that's going to be putting what we've read into our own words. That's the step that truly shows that we've understood what we've read, when we can take the paragraph, remember the main idea and the details, and then tell someone else or tell ourselves what we've read in our own words. Another reason I really like this strategy, especially for younger students like my third graders, is because there's only 3 steps to remember. And RAP, like they said this week in the videos that we watched, when you rap, you talk, and a lot of kids can connect to that. So when we rap, we talk. We're going to talk ourselves through what we've read, ask ourselves questions, even though it might seem silly at first, and then we're going to paraphrase what we've read so that we can put it into our own words and understand it. So what I've done is I've gotten a little excerpt from Super Teacher worksheets, which I use a lot for short comprehension checks with my third graders, and I've gotten a nonfiction third grade level text here about the magician of the sea. And I always thought the plural of octopus was octopi, but in this story they say octopuses. So just bear with me if that's incorrect. I'm going to read the first step of my strategy, my paraphrasing strategy, is to read a paragraph. So I'm going to read the paragraph, and then we're going to work through the other 2 steps of the paragraph. RAP, read a paragraph. Here I go. Octopuses are extremely intelligent. They can learn new things just like humans. They've even learned a few tricks to get them out of sticky situations. If an octopus is threatened by a predator, such as a shark or bird, it can use some pretty incredible skills to get away. Octopuses don't have teeth or sharp claws to defend themselves. Instead, they use more clever ways to fool their attackers. Octopuses like to hide themselves in the sand on the bottom of the ocean floor. How, you ask? Well, the octopus is like a chameleon because it can change the color of its skin to match the sand. And this color change, or camouflage, happens in less than a minute. Okay, so now I've done my first step. I have read a paragraph. Now I need to go from R to A, and I need to ask myself, what was the main idea of the paragraph? Now I know a lot of the time I can find the main idea in the first sentence. Well, let me read the first sentence. Octopuses are extremely intelligent. Well, I'm thinking back to the paragraph that I read, and it didn't only talk about octopuses being smart. It talked about kind of the way that they hide. So I'm going to skim my paragraph one more time, and I'm going to see if there's another sentence in my paragraph that makes more sense for my main idea. And I found this. They've even learned a few tricks to get them out of sticky situations. I kind of think that that's more along the line of my main idea. The main idea of my paragraph being that the octopus has to come up with a way to hide from other animals that want to eat it or harm it. So now that I've found my main idea, I'm going to find some supporting details. I'm going to go back in my paragraph and I'm going to say that they don't have teeth or sharp claws, so they have to find another way to protect themselves. They go to the bottom of the ocean floor, and then they change color to match the sand. And I even saw that word camouflage. That would probably be a great vocabulary word to use the links strategy with if I was having trouble with remembering what the word camouflage means. So now that I've defined my main idea and my supporting details, my last step in wrap is going to be to put it into my own words. So if I was going to put this into my own words, I would say that an octopus has to come up with ways to defend itself from animals that want to eat it. It does not have teeth or sharp claws, so it has to lay on the bottom of the ocean, and it changes to a tan color to match the sand so that other animals can't see it. Now, did I use some keywords from that paragraph in my paraphrasing? Yes, when I put it in my own words, there were some words I had to still use, otherwise I would completely change the meaning of the paragraph. But did I verbatim go back to the paragraph and read word for word those words? No, I remembered those keywords and put them into my paraphrasing of that paragraph, which is important when you have nonfiction text. You can't always change each and every word into your own words, which is one point that I kind of realized as I was watching some of the videos this week. So paraphrasing, the paraphrasing strategy to remember and wrap it up, we talk about wrap. We talk about R-A-P. When we want to remember what we've read and we want to put it into our own words, we first read a paragraph. Then we A, ask ourselves what was the main idea and what were the supporting details of the main idea. And then we P, put it into our own words.